Welcome to Babies and Bones. Click to subscribe below.
Don't forget to like and comment. Your comments can guide us on what videos we make next. Welcome to Babies and Bones. I'm Dr. Nima.
And I'm Dr. Kate, and today we're going to talk about a hot topic: should my kid play football? So this has come to light in the media, specifically the discussion around concussions because of the long-term possible complications. So today we want to talk about should my kid play football and a little bit about concussions.
So there are about 1.6 to 3.8 million concussions in sports every year, and that number could actually be underreported. There's a wide range of concussions, obviously, and most people think that concussions only happen in football or to boys. That's not very true. Concussions can happen in other sports such as lacrosse, rugby, as well as basketball, soccer, and ice hockey. And concussions are not solely happening to males. It also happens to women. Actually, in sports such as basketball and soccer, women get concussions way more often than men. So it's important for us to know what a concussion is, how we recognize it, and how we treat it. So first off, what is a concussion? Kate?
So the American Academy of Neurology defines a concussion as a clinical syndrome of biomechanically induced alteration of brain function, typically affecting memory and orientation, which may involve a loss of consciousness.
So that's a lot to take in. What does that really mean? It means someone gets hit with a direct or indirect blow, and it could affect their memory, their attention span, and they can sometimes develop a loss of consciousness. Okay, that's a short breakdown.
So what exactly happens to your brain when someone gets a concussion?
So after you get hit, or your child gets hit, whether it's a direct or indirect blow, it causes an injury to the brain. And the brain needs more nutrients and more blood flow when there's an injury to help it heal. However, during a concussion, it actually gets less blood flow and less nutrients, making it more problematic for the patient or the athlete.
Got it. And how is that diagnosed out on a field or an ice rink?
That's a great question. So usually a concussion is diagnosed on some type of sporting field or court, and it's done by sideline medical professionals. What they do is they do a battery of tests, neurological tests, and they test for your attention, your memory, your balance, and many other things.
Got it. And as a parent or as a medical professional, I guess, what are the symptoms of a concussion?
So that's an excellent question. We all want to be able to recognize it if someone we love has a concussion. So some of the common symptoms include headache and dizziness, as well as confusion, disorientation, memory loss, and most importantly, loss of consciousness. The reason I say most importantly is because if someone has a loss of consciousness and it's greater than a minute, it's been shown that the concussion is actually much more severe.
Okay, Nima, so how do you initially treat symptoms of a concussion?
So that's a great question. So there's a common phrase amongst healthcare professionals: when in doubt, sit them out. So the first thing you do is you take the athlete out of the practice or the game when they develop a concussion. If the medical professional feels that they're safe to go home with their parents, they can send them home. And parents just need to watch for worsening symptoms. While they're home, the most important thing is symptomatic treatment. So for example, if they have a headache, they can take something like Tylenol. But you should check with a doctor before ever considering giving NSAIDs, such as aspirin, Aleve, Motrin, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which we've mentioned in several episodes. So make sure to clear that with a doctor first. Once they're home and parents are monitoring, parents just have to make sure that there's no worsening symptoms. And if there are, then at that point, they need to consider sending them to the emergency department.
One of the most common questions I get asked is after a child has a concussion is, should I be waking my child every hour throughout the night to make sure they're okay? And the answer to that is no, you should not. You should let your kids sleep. Again, as Nima said, if the symptoms are going to be worsening, the kids will present with those symptoms either by waking up or the next morning or something like that.
Rest is so important for their brain after this type of injury to the brain.
Exactly. So speaking of symptoms that would warrant a visit to your doctor or to the emergency room, a couple of those are worsening headaches, vomiting would be a big one.
Yeah, as well as seizures. Seizures are a really big one. So if you see any vomiting, worsening headaches, seizures, or any loss of consciousness, those are some examples of why they should go to the ER. There's other ones too. Any kind of new neurological finding. And what does that mean? Things such as change in speech,
change in vision changes, weakness in the body or generalized weakness would be concerning.
Loss of motor function. So that all of a sudden their arms and legs aren't working like normal. Those are big deals. You need to take them to the emergency department immediately if any of those things happen.
Great. And then another question I get asked commonly is how long will post-concussive symptoms last? So in general, the headache, the fatigue, those symptoms will last about 2 to 3 weeks after the initial injury. And then kids usually are progressively getting better. And then another big question I typically get asked is when can kids go back to school? When can they go back to sports? So what do you think, Nima? What's the answer to that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's always asked by parents and the athletes themselves. So in terms of school, we want to do an active rehab. Of course, we start off with rest. It's very important. But in the past, we believe that we should give them prolonged rest. Now it's more about a few days of rest and start to slowly challenge the brain. We allow them to do their work and their reading, but give them more time for projects, more time for tests. And if they remain asymptomatic as they're doing light reading and light work, then we allow them to do more and more. In terms of sports, it's similar, but it's with physical rehab. So we start off with a little bit of light activity. And if they're asymptomatic for 24 hours, we allow them to do drills, then non-contact sports. Then we get to full contact sports and finally return to play. But the key to go up to each one of those next steps on that ladder is for them to remain asymptomatic during the previous activity. Once that continues, we know the kid's ready for the next step.
So I think back to our original question, should my kid play football? Hopefully we helped guide that answer a little bit, but I guess from a personal or a parent standpoint,
You're probably wondering what we think.
Yeah, what do you think?
So if I told my children that they were not allowed to play football, I would be a total hypocrite. I watch football all the time. I love football. Ideally, in an ideal world, it'd be nice if they didn't play, just because I don't have to worry about concussion, the high risk of concussions. But the truth is, it would be foolish to think that other sports don't have it, and we went over that earlier. So no matter what sport they play, concussions are a real risk. So if my child wanted to play football, I'd have a very honest discussion with them about the risks of concussions and allow them to play. It's their decision. But if they ever started to have those concussions, we'd have a very serious conversation about how it can't continue, because I don't want to see them have long-term problems as a result of a sport they played for a few years in high school or whatnot. So for me, as long as they don't have concussions, I'd let them play. But if they did, we'd probably pull them out or talk about stopping. That'd be my real answer.
I totally agree. Hopefully that was helpful and you guys learned a little bit about concussions. And if you have any friends who are wondering if should their kid play football, maybe this will help them out a little bit as well.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks so much.